Welcome back to the Cheap Heat Productions podcast. Okay, welcome back to the show, and today I'm joined by a man that you will probably know as Art the Clown. Voice actor and actor David Howard Thornton. How are you today, man?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, man?
Doing good. We were just kind of talking there off air, like things are getting back to normal, so I'm happy. You're happy as well.
Oh yeah.
What's the last couple of years been like for you?
It's been weird. I mean, last year started to get a little bit better though, but like 2020, once everything shut down, I wasn't really doing anything for like a whole entire year until we started opening up again. So it was, God, I was just being lazy and sitting around playing video games all day, put on weight, killed my health and all that. So I'm like, I gotta get back into being me again. So this past year has been a whole, just trying to get back to normal. We finally finished Terrifier 2, and I worked on another film called Stream that we're still almost finished with, and then started doing conventions again. And then, started exercising like crazy too, because, we can't have a chubby Art.
Getting back in shape then as well.
Yeah.
You were probably doing a lot of things like this, I'd imagine, Zoom calls and streaming and interviews like this. Did you ever get pissed off with doing stuff like this?
Oh, no, it kept me sane, I think, because it's like I was just here isolated in my little New York apartment with like 2 roommates. And so it's like, I'm tired of talking to them all the time. I want to talk to other people.
Yeah. That's when I started this thing, because I was in the kind of event promotion game. Mm-hmm. And that was obviously dead for a couple of years. So I started this to kind of tick the brand over that I kind of created, and it's going well. I've had a few interesting people on that I'm sure you've seen there, the intro video, and most of my interviews are all virtual, because like there's not too many people in the horror and wrestling and rock music is kind of what I go for on this, and most of the guests are in America, so a lot of them have been virtual. I have been fortunate enough to do a couple of in-person ones, so maybe when people start coming back to Ireland for conventions, concerts and stuff like that, it opens the door to doing them in person, because in person is better, but it's okay as well.
Oh, definitely. I would love to come to Ireland. I'm coming to like Manchester though later on this year for a convention for
the Love of Horror.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
That is like a huge convention. I would love to go to that. I think I'll have to go sometime, but I think I'm blowing my money this year because I'm coming over to the States. I'm coming over to the States this month to go to WrestleMania, so that's my money gone.
Oh gosh, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
That's a trip worth taking, I think, especially after all this craziness for the past 2 years. It's good to get out and do something fun like that.
Yeah, and I'm going with a group of guys that don't watch wrestling, and I watch it, but I'm not as big a fan as I was when I was younger watching it, because the product's changed now. But we're going to use it as an excuse for having a couple of beverages for the week.
Oh, there you go.
True Irish fashion.
It's like how over here we use St. Patrick's Day for an excuse to have a few beverages. So, this is only fair.
Every day is St. Patrick's Day over here, man.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Like one of my old coworkers, he was from Ireland. So like when we were having St. Patrick's Day one day at work, he's like, what is this? We don't do that over here. So you just want an excuse to drink, don't you? I'm like, yeah. It's like, you're adults. I'm like, I know.
Yeah. We definitely we pull that card a lot in this country anyway.
Yeah.
In terms of yourself getting into the entertainment business, we'll say, how did it begin for you?
Oh gosh, oddly enough, considering what type of roles I play now, I started off doing church theater of all things.
Wow.
Yeah, total 180.
Yeah, it's gone down a sinister path since then.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that's how I started. I started doing that. Then I got into doing like a community theater later on when I was in like middle school and high school. Like because I was very shy, and my mom, I got bullied a lot, so she's like figured that would be a good way for me to break out of my shell and also show people my other side. That I'm a funny guy and stuff like that. So that worked, and that's where I really found my love for theater. And I did that, but I got a degree, oddly enough, in elementary education because I was trying to be pragmatic with my life. And, it's like, well, acting career might not pay the bills, but at least a teaching salary can do that. And so that's what I got my major in college. But I decided not to go into that after I got out of college because it's like my mom passed away while I was in college, and that kind of changed my whole perspective about life. And I was like, you know what? I get more fulfillment out of entertaining people than actually teaching them. So that's what I really should do with my life. And so I decided to just move up to New York City and pursue it full time as a career. And I mean, it took about 13 years, and then Terrifier came out and changed my life.
Yeah. But before Terrifier, you were doing a lot of voice acting work on video
Yeah,
games and things like that.
yeah.
What's that experience like as a voice actor? Because I actually had Marty Grabstein on the podcast a
Oh,
few weeks
nice.
back, and he does the voice, for Courage the Cowardly Dog, and he was telling me his
Yeah.
experiences. So I'd like to hear like what kind of process is it for you, like laying down voice for a video game, for example?
Oh gosh, it's a lot of fun, but a lot of hard work too. Because like as actors, we're usually used to like you know using our whole bodies for things, and you can show emotion and all that with your face and all that. But with voice acting, you got none of that. Everything's got to be done with your voice, and it's a lot harder in that way. It's a lot more exhausting, strangely enough. I'll find myself just like coming back from a 2 or 3 hour voiceover session, and I would just have to crash, like just like sleep and stuff like that, because I was like, oh man, I exhaust myself, especially when I was like doing stuff for video games and involved fight scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because even though I'm doing that just with my voice, I'm sitting there and actually throwing out punches and stuff like that, just trying to get my body into it without hitting the microphone or anything like that. Because that's you can get a better, a read, I guess you could say, when you're actually doing some kind of physical movement or something like that. So like, even though you're not seeing me in the booth, I'm still waving my arms around, making faces, all that kind of stuff. So it's still acting, but you're having to channel everything into your voice, which can definitely be a challenge. But there are some benefits. You don't have to worry about how you look, and you don't have
Yeah.
to really memorize lines. So you just come in and just read the copy you're given. But I mean, it can also be a challenge too, because sometimes they'll just throw characters at you on the day, and you have to come up with a character right there on the spot and make a voice and do everything right there, all the character work right there on the spot. So it's kind of like improv a lot of times too.
Yeah. So you could end up doing various different characters for a particular project then as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
especially with video games, because they sometimes say, "Hey, can you do all these little background characters, like NPC characters that get killed off or all that kind of stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do whatever." So yeah, I
Yeah.
even do animals. So
Do you want to give us an example?
oh god, I mean like goats. People love my goats for some just like, just doing that. I've been brought in for cartoon series. It's like, hey, we need someone to do a goat. Can you come in? I'm like, yeah, sure. And they pay me money, and I'm like, I walk out. I'm like $1,000 richer just for going. It's like, sure.
Yeah. And another thing that I was reading up online was the Grinch that stole Christmas,
Yeah, I
and
did
your
that.
role that was like a theater, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was a musical theater production of it. I did the first 5 national tours here in the United States and we took it up to Canada too, of the Grinch. And I played Grandpa Who, and but I also understudied Stephen Carl, who was Robbie Rotten from Lazy Town, is the Grinch. So
Yeah.
I had a great teacher there because Stefan was amazing with physical comedy. I put a lot of what I learned from him into art as well. So
What were the main things that you learned from him from a theater perspective to take into film?
I would say is a lot more of like the mime work or the clowning work, a lot of the physical comedy, because I had always done physical comedy, but he really helped fine tune my skills. He was like, okay, I see what you're doing, but this is what will make it better. And so that's what I brought a lot more into art, because I wanted to bring more of that aspect out of art, was the clown aspect of him, instead of it just being a guy in a suit. Actually, oh, this is actually a clown, so it added more to his personality as well. So he just wasn't just another silent villain. He had charisma to him, I guess you could say.
Yeah, mannerisms and different things as well.
Yeah.
Do you find that being in theater in front of a live audience is tougher than being, say, on set, or do you get more of an enjoyment of having a crowd there because there's more pressure, maybe?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, because I mean, I like having the crowd there because you get the feedback, especially when you're doing comedy. You get that feedback. You know if a joke is landing or not, and it's like it for me, because that's what I always did before Terrifier was comedy. So like going and Terrifier was my first time doing an actual film. I had done extra work, but I'd never really done film, so it was kind of weird doing scenes that were supposed to be funny, and then I'm not hearing any feedback until they say cut. So I'm like, oh God, you get in your head, because like that's kind of silence is death to a comedian. You're just like, oh God, this is not working. This is not funny. And then they say cut, and the whole crew starts laughing. You're like, oh, thank God. But that's what I like about having that audience there, because you can feed off of their energy as well. But at the same time, there are those benefits of doing film. Like if you mess up, you can just do another take. When you mess up on stage, you just got to keep going. And but sometimes that leads to some awesome moments too. Where I've had moments where someone forgot to make an entrance, and I ended up just improvising on stage for like 5 minutes, and ended up making just big, huge comedy routine out there. And I was like, God, that was fun. So I like both. They both have their merits.
Yeah, there's a lot of improv involved in theater, especially if something goes wrong, if someone falls or something like that. Is there anything that springs to mind from your work in theater that you said like, oh, that was a huge mistake, or something funny that happened?
Oh God, so many. But I think one I really remember is back when I did a stage production of Aladdin, not the Disney version, but like a different version of it, where I played his sidekick, Nuff Said the Camel.
Yeah.
And it's the scene where like Aladdin had just wished to become a prince, so he has to go change clothes. So magical thing, poof, disappears some puff of smoke. Well, I had to kill time on stage for the costume change. Well, the costume change took a lot longer than it was anticipated one night, and so I'm just left out there after saying my lines. And I'm like, oh God, he's still not here. So I'm like, okay, what can I do here? Well, I'm left alone with the lamp. So, hey, I'm going to make my own wishes. Screw Aladdin. And so like you see the guys up in the textbook having to, they're like, oh God, we don't have more special effects and stuff. They're like the smoke and everything. Like, oh God. So I'm out there just coming up with the wishes and stuff like that. And I'm like, I could do this. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I could do this instead. No. And I'm just trying to kill time. But and finally Aladdin comes out and we're like, hey.
My God.
You caught me. It was a lot of fun, but it's like it's one of those moments. It's like it was one of those things too. It was like he could have come out sooner, but he was just on the side in the wings watching me just going to town, just making up stuff and laughing his head off. They're like, dude, they're waiting for you. He's waiting for you to get back out there on stage. He's like, oh God. It was funny.
In terms of Terrifier, it has kind of its place now, doesn't it, in horror culture? Mm-hmm. What is it, do you think, about this movie that resonates with the fans? Like you touched on, you get to go to conventions now and stuff like this. Because like for a movie that I was reading that the budget was 35,000, I don't know if that's accurate.
That's true.
But like,
that's true.
But the quality in production and the movie, you wouldn't think it was such a low budget. Like, what is it about it that you think resonates with the audience? Because sometimes the horror audience can be a bit standoffish.
Oh yeah,
especially if they're old school compared to newer kind of movies. So, what do you think it is that resonates with the audience on that one?
Yeah,
the hardcore audience.
First off, like with that budget, it's like the quality that we had there. Considering our budget, I was like, most low budget independent films are made for at least $1 million or more. And so for us to make it with just a fraction of that, a third of that, it's just like unbelievable. And it just is, that's a testament to the talent of the cast and crew.
Yeah.
Because and the dedication that everybody put into it, we put a lot of love into. We were like all sacrificing our pay for this because we believed in something cool. But we're like, yeah, we never expected to blow up the way it did. But I'm like, I think the reason it resonated with people is because we were horror fans making the type of horror film we wanted to watch ourselves. We're all of us, especially Damien. I mean, he's like a huge horror. I mean, he's literally named after Damien from The Omen. So he's grown up on horror. He's like an walking encyclopedia of horror knowledge. And he's like, he was just tired of watching really crappy slasher movies that they've been coming out the past decade or so. And he's like, you know what? Let's make our own. Let's make the movie that we want to see. And that's what we did. And it's just like, and I think that's why it resonates with people, because it has a lot of love in there for the genre. There's so many Easter eggs, so many throwbacks to, the horror
little hidden messages here and there as well.
So many homages. And it's like, but I think a key component of that, not to toot my own horn, is just the character of arts. It's just like Damien really created a cool character there. It's like the look of the character resonates with people. It's a very iconic look. But it's just like his characterization is like, I kind of look at him as he's like an amalgamation of all the different horror icons that came before him. There's a little bits of Freddy and Jason, Mike Myers, and Leatherface and Pinhead and Chucky and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera inside of him. And I think that's why it resonated. Plus, we also, he's got great charisma. He's fun to watch. He's not just another silent guy that just cocks his head when he kills someone and walks on to the next kill. Yeah. But it's also the kills. It's like we didn't, wuss out on these kills in this movie. Yeah. It's like so many films, they're trying to play it safe this day and age, when, horror's always been about pushing the envelope and trying new things and seeing where they could go with things. And that's what we did with this. We're like, no, let's actually show the kills happening instead of cutting away like most films do now. And we didn't use CG the whole entire time. We used old school practical effects. We had those tubes filled up with blood that someone's on the other end with a pump or just blowing into like that. It's just, I think that's why it resonated with people so much too. It's just like, it just had that old school feel to it. And it scratched that itch that people have been, wanting to be scratched for like a decade or so.
Yeah. What was the audition process like for you?
It was interesting. That was very interesting. It kind of scared me because, I'm so used to getting scripts in advance, and I never got a script. So I figured, okay, they'll have a script for me in the room. And I get there and everybody else's script. So I asked the person, manning the door, hey, man, I have a copy of the script so I can look over before they call me in. It's like, oh, you should have gotten one. I'm like, oh God, no. Oh God, because this is my first feature film role that I was auditioning for too, and I'm like, I know I'm perfect for this part. Now I'm getting screwed over because my agents didn't send me a script, and I'm like, oh no. So they call me into the room, and I'm like, I am so sorry, I never got a script. I'm like, oh, you don't need one. Art doesn't talk. So I'm like, okay, so what do I do then? And they're like, well, just come up with a scene where you decapitate a guy and you're happy about doing it.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. Cool. Can I have a few minutes? Like, no, just go ahead. We just want to see what you can do on your feet. And I'm like, okay. And the scenes online where you can watch it, but like a short synopsis of the audition process was like, I came up with this thing where I like kind of cartoonishly stuck up behind my victim, knocked him down. Well, I knocked him out, hit him in the head. I sawed off his head with a hacksaw, picked it up, tasted it, didn't like the taste of it. So I took a salt shaker out and seasoned it. Tasted again, gave it a thumbs up, kind of bathed in the blood a little bit, and then skipped out on my merry way. And all that was just, none of that was planned. It was just off the top of my head thing. I don't know where it came from, but I think that just came from my theater training of improv.
That's exactly what I was going to say to you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that it paid off. All that paid off. And they were laughing their heads off, and they're like, can you come in for a makeup test? And that's like every actor's dream right there, is to be asked that kind of question in the room, because that pretty much means you have the part when they ask you in for a makeup test. And especially for a feature film role, I mean, most people come in multiple times to audition over and over and over again for the lead role. And for them to be basically, hey, you want the part. It was great. So it was a good day.
Yeah, yeah. What I was going to say as well is, like, obviously, if the movie 35,000 we touched on was the budget, so you guys must have had a really small crew. What was the vibes like on set when you were doing some of those gruesome things? Like,
Oh God, it was actually pretty lighthearted. It is.
yeah,
I mean, and I think that was just out of necessity, because if we weren't joking around and having fun the whole entire time, we would have been miserable, because those locations we were filming in were not the most fun locations to film in. Most of them didn't have heat, and we're filming in New York City and outside of New York City in middle of January, so it's like 20 degrees and below outside, so it's very cold, and so this is Fahrenheit, not Celsius. I have to remember. Oh yeah, metric system. So yeah, this is 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So I can't do the math in my head, but
it's cold.
It's cold. Yeah, it's very cold. So like there was a lot of joking around and stuff like that. I'm like I'm not one of those actors that stays in character the whole entire time on set. So I don't go to those absurd lengths as some people do. And I think the rest of the cast and crew is very grateful that I'm not one of those actors.
Yeah, that goes into the zone and then just won't talk to anyone.
Oh yeah, I can turn art on and off when I need to. It's just like I can be joking around with someone doing silly voices. They're like, "Okay, rolling," and I go right into art, and they're like, "Cut," and I'm like, "Oh my God, are you okay? I didn't hurt you." Like, no, you're fine. Which is kind of look weird when I'm covered in blood, and I'm like, "Are you fine? Are you okay? I'm sorry."
Did you get a lot of creative freedom with the character then when you were filming, like in terms of movements and stuff that you'd done, or was everything kind of scripted for you?
A little bit of both. That's the great thing about working with Damien. He knows what he wants, but he's also open to ideas and experimentation. And it's like the scene where you see me in the pizzeria where I'm making all the faces. That was him just like, hey, I'm gonna just turn the camera on for like a few minutes and just let you make faces. Okay. And that's what I did. I just sat there just making faces, and it was fun. I was like, oh, this is great. And that's how a lot of it is. He's like, especially with the comedic bits in there. He's like, he was just like, let me just play around with things and see what worked. I mean, that's kind of nice. We did that even more so in part 2 because when he wrote part 1, he didn't know me. In part 2, he knew what my style was, so he deliberately wrote scenes in part 2 where it's just like art plays, and we didn't know what we're gonna do until we got into the actual room, and I see what I have around me, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this with this and this and this and this and this and this, and I'm just gonna play around with props and stuff like that, and that it's great. But it's like at the same time, he knows what he wants too. So it's because I've dealt with directors that gave you too much freedom, then you're like, well, why are you here? I would love to have some direction so I know I'm doing the right thing, because it's like I like some guidance there. But I've also had other directors that micro direct every little thing to like, I want you to cock your head to this angle when you say this line and do this. And it's like, so how much of this performance is actually me and how much of that is just from the director? So it's like Damien is, I would say, every actor's like type of director. He's a very actor friendly director.
Yeah, and there's a good balance of comedy to horror in the movie, because sometimes in the more recent horror movies, for example, I'm wearing a Chucky t-shirt, right? We'll say Seed of Chucky that came out. That's fucking awful. Like, just there was too much comedy in it. Bride of Chucky was okay because it had the balance. Ronnie Yu was a great director. He done that movie. And then when Seed of Chucky came out, there was just too much comedy in it. But they've too
campy.
Yeah. But they've reversed it back now, and they made a great TV series that you might have seen last year.
Loved it. Yeah. It was so good. And
absolutely
that's the fantastic. They found that right area there. And that's that tricky line that we're always walking with Terrifier as well. It's like, we don't want to get too campy with things, but we still want to keep it funny, because, like, good God, the horrible things we're doing, we have to have something to counterbalance that and give people, a chance to like breathe.
Yeah.
Because it's like, God, if there wasn't comedy in Terrifier, it would just be a depressing movie.
Yeah. In terms of the second movie, then it's shot, it's all ready to go, but obviously COVID happened. What problems did you encounter when COVID hit in terms of the movie being released?
Boy, I was like, we had most of the film done before COVID really hit us. So especially literally the week before everything locked down here in New York City, we filmed the big crowd scene where we had a bunch of stunt work and extras and stuff like that. So if we had to film that scene during COVID, that would have been a logistical nightmare, dealing with all the precautions and all that kind. It would that would have been. So we lucked out there, and so that was good. But I mean, the thing that it complicated with us, it just took us longer to get the movie out, but at the same time, it kind of gave us that little bit of benefit of extra time to really do things we wanted to do. And because we had 2 big, huge kill scenes we still needed to film. And we started filming both of them, but Damien needed time to make the prosthetics for the rest of the kill scene. And then COVID happened. So it's like, well, I got the time to do that now. And so he actually just went back to the drawing board and revamped those scenes. And it's like, hey, I got the time. So let's make these as big and crazy as we can make them now. We don't have to worry about a timetable because of COVID. We don't know how long this is going to last. So let's just take our time with this now and make this the kill scenes that they really should be. I mean, what we already started filming would have been totally serviceable, but like what we actually ended up filming are so much better. Like one of the scenes, which is probably going to be the scene that rivals the hacksaw scene, just in the viciousness. This is a very vicious, mean, demented scene. And it was really supposed to just take 2 days for us to film this scene, but because of all the stuff we added to it, it took about almost a week to film because it's like, oh, wow, we're just going crazy. We're batting for the fences with this. So it's basically 4 or 5 minutes of Art just eviscerating somebody. And it's, I think we're probably going to get some hate, like, oh my God, this is torture porn and all that kind of stuff. But it's like,
that's the world we live in.
Yeah. It's I think horror fans will love it though. It's just like that's the thing though. As you come, it's the world we're living in now. With like people are a lot more, picky about things now. They take more offense to certain things. I've seen one thing that kind of bothers Damien and I is people are like, oh, Damien must be a misogynist and all that kind of stuff because Art's a misogynist and. I'm like, no. I mean, Damien and I both come from families of strong women. I mean, Damien was raised by a single mom with all sisters. So he's the furthest thing from him. It's like, I think people forget Art is the bad guy. And we're showing things that truly make him a bad guy. Like he's a vile, disgusting, evil character. I mean, I don't think he hates women. I think he hates everybody equally. It's what it is with, the whole wherever it gets the misogyny things. Yeah, he does things to these women, but I mean, he kills more men in Terrifier. But it's the trope that's been there since like the 70s and even earlier, going all the way back. It's just like there's the final girl.
The example I can think of was when the Halloween came out, the latest Halloween, and some people were kicking up in America over he's killed firefighters. This is fucking Michael Myers. Michael Myers has killed everybody. He's killed women. He's killed nurses. He's killed doctors. He's killed everyone. Yeah. And I just couldn't believe the controversy over that. And I was delighted that they didn't. I was delighted they didn't cut the scene.
Oh yeah, me too. Because it's so stupid. That's what makes the bad guy the bad guy. You can't. It's like that kind of mentality is what's killed the genre in the past decade or so because people are too worried about playing safe. It's like. And especially when it comes to like, oh, all the violence towards women, it's like, yeah, there's violence towards men and women in all these films. But it's like people empathize with the female characters more. And that's why you have the final girl trope. It's not really necessarily about, taking power away from women. It's actually empowering women to triumph over the bad guy.
Yes.
And take him down, give him his just desserts for the horrible, evil crap he's doing. It's like, we're trying to personify the things that we personally think are despicable.
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to in the main scale of things like from, say, TV networks and sponsorships and monies. Like that's what a lot of this comes down to, I think, these days, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why, we weren't able to put the first film in theaters. I doubt if we'll be able to put the second one in theaters too because of the content. But it's like, but back in the day, you could show all that kind of stuff. People are like, oh, this is great. But it's just people got a little bit too sensitive towards all that, and but it's not just in horror; it's also in comedy as well.
Yeah. If you don't want to see blood and guts, well, then don't watch a horror movie. Maybe that would be a good advice for people.
It's not for everybody.
No. When can people expect the movie to be out?
Now we're right now, I think, negotiating with distribution about all that, but we're looking, latest Halloween, which is perfect because the movie takes place on Halloween anyway, so that would be a great time to release it. But it just depends what distribution offers us and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, all that's being negotiated right now. So hopefully, in the next month or so, we'll finally have like a release date or something like that if everything goes to plan. But I think people are really chomping at the bit this time for part 2 because I think we're like a proven commodity this time. It's like when we're trying to push part 1, people are like, I don't know if we want to take a risk on this, but now that it's like people know who Art the Clown is now, they want to see part 2. There's definitely demand out there, so
yeah,
I imagine something's going to be happening soon.
And who knows, there may even be a part 3. We'll have to wait and see what the ending is.
Oh yeah, we have ideas. We're not done with the character yet. I mean, it's like we're already batting around ideas about part 3. So it's like So if he survives,
no spoilers. No spoilers. Yeah. We touched on earlier that you were talking about the convention world. I have never been lucky enough to visit a horror convention over in Ireland, but I do see them online, and I've had a few people from the horror industry on this podcast, like CJ Graham, Christine Elise McCarthy, different people like that. Do you enjoy going to these conventions, and do you have to dress up as Art like all the time or some of the time, or what way do you do things?
Oh yeah, I love doing conventions. I used to do conventions before I was, as a guest, not as a guest, but like I used to be on the other side of the table, I guess, as everybody else, coming. It's like as a patron. So I loved going to conventions back in the day, and I always wanted to be on that other side of the table as the celebrity guest and doing panels and all that kind of stuff. Because I think that's just a great way to interact and meet the fans that gave you the career. And it's like put you where you are, and it's a way of saying thank you and actually getting to know them all. I love it. I like Damon and I have a blast at these things. We usually go to the after parties as well, hang out with everybody. So I love them. I know some celebrities don't do that kind of stuff. They usually just stay to their room or something like that afterwards. But I think it's a great way just to hang out with everybody. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. As for the dressing as Art, I usually do that for the photo op sessions.
Yeah.
And Damien will come in. If they bring Damien, then he'll do my makeup for me, because I won't let anybody else do my makeup for me. It's Damien. Because like if someone's going to get a photo op with Art the Clown, it needs to be authentic.
Got to be right.
It can't be half-assed. It can't be just some local hire doing the makeup and stuff like that. We want it to be right. We want people to get the full experience, and I do it all in character too. I don't talk or anything like that. As soon as I walk out of my hotel room, I'm in art.
You're in the zone then.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's so much fun. I can just mess around with people and have fun, and people love it. It's like I scared so many people. I love that part of it. I just sneak up behind people, honk the horn at them, they jump out and they turn around, see me, and they freak out. And I love that aspect of it. It's a fun little exercise, and just acting and improv for me, just to mess around with the public in that way.
Yeah, you have to be prepared to be scared at a horror convention as well.
Oh yeah.
In terms of this year, then you were saying you were working on another movie. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been working on another film called Stream, not Scream, but Stream like you stream something online.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they sound so much alike. Ooh. But it's with a lot of the Terrifier 2 crew. It's like Michael Levy, who was the exterminator that I decapitated in part 1. He's directing it. His brother Jason, who is the bald-headed cop, is in it as well. We have a lot. Damien is doing the practical effects for it, so the kills are going to be pretty awesome in this. We have a lot of horror alums in this too. It's like kind of like the Expendables version of a horror film. We have like Danielle Harris, Felissa Rose, Dave Sheridan, Jeffrey Combs, Tony Todd, Dee Wallace, Daniel Roebuck, Mark Holton, Terry Alexander, Tim Reed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's been amazing being on that set and seeing these other actors work. It's just like, wow, I grew up watching them, and now I'm doing a film with all these people. So it's pretty cool. And it's just like, I can't wait for people to see it. I'm almost finished with it. I have like maybe 1 or 2 more scenes. So
that would probably be the end of the year as well, I think, will it?
Yeah, hopefully either the end of this year or early next year that'll be coming out. So I'm excited. I'm very excited for that one.
Yeah, man, it was an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today. I really enjoyed that.
Great hopefully with you too.
Maybe when the second one comes out, we might hit you up and maybe discuss it.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about. Oh my God, I think everybody's going to really fall in love with our new final girl, Sienna. I mean, she is badass. Lauren LaVere is the one that plays her, and yeah, as she's very, very much like an Ellen Ripley type of character. So I think people are going to fall in love with her.
Brilliant. Do you want to give a shout out with your social medias and stuff, or do you just want me to put them down below?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram under David Howard Thornton, and I'm also on Cameo and Memo as well. So you can find me on either of those if you want me to do some shout out for birthdays or whatnot. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thanks so much, David.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you too.